Welcome to Fiction Flux. Today, we're diving into a brand new fanfiction series written by EternallyLostAuthor, What If Deku Was a Girl? Without further ado, let's get started. Midoriya Izuku laid in bed staring idly up at the ceiling. Summer break lacked the mystique it used to have, he'd only grown more distant from his school friends, as the years have passed. Now on the cusp of going into junior high, it didn't look like that trend was changing anytime soon. As amazing as they were, especially his oldest friend, Bakugo Katsuki, he just couldn't summon the effort to deal with their words. Kachan, he closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. He was lifted from his funk by the light knocking on his door. Izuku, honey. Yeah, mom. The door cracked open, revealing the gentle smile of his mother. A package came in today. Her smile grew slightly. It's from your father. Her voice trilled with a note of happiness. The boy immediately sat up. His melancholy demeanor was immediately washed away with excitement. Really? He hopped out of bed in one swift motion, falling into step behind his mother as they headed to the living room. Where is he sending from this time? A large box sat on in the middle of the floor, covered in postage. I believe the latest site he was investigating was somewhere in China. We'll just have to see for ourselves, she replied brightly. The two immediately dug in, opening the box and seeing what goodies it continued. Midoriya Hisashi, despite his rather offensive ability to breathe fire, had a passion for history. An anthropologist fascinated with world that has existed before the rise of Quirks, only lost in the shift in power. It gave the unfortunate side effect that he was often lost in his studies for months at a time. He did his best to try and keep up with things back at home at the very least. I found it. Izuku held up the small disc, the hollow mail. He excitedly handed it to his mother, who immediately set it to play. The projector sprung to life and an image of a well-built man in a white t-shirt. Short curly black hair was corralled by a bandana, a confident smile on his face. Greetings from the Sichuan province. The camera turned to a shot out the window of his hotel out towards some mountainous terrain covered in greenery. Looking closely, one could see the remnants of larger buildings. A short drive from the ruins of Chengdu, he continued before bringing the camera back to his face. The dig is progressing well, the findings look promising. If the timetable remains stable, I should be back by Christmas. His smile became a bit more subdued. I wish I could be by sooner, but with the size of the chosen site, there's a lot to sort through. I definitely will make it up this time for winter break. That's a promise. He offered the camera a thumbs up. Inko couldn't quite repress the sigh, choosing to focus on some of the souvenirs her husband had sent. Izuku nearly spoke up, but the hologram continued. After all, next year you'll be moving on to 5th grade, won't you, kiddo? You'll be in junior high before you know it. I trust you've been keeping up with your studies. He smirked. You're a smart kid, Izuku, so I'm sure you'll show them all. The sheer confidence was infectious, even through such an impersonal means. The dark haze of Izuku's earlier musing were washed away by the praise. But that's neither here nor there. As you've probably noticed, I sent some souvenirs for you both. It was a lot for the usual snacks and interesting baubles he tended to send. The family had amassed quite the collection of knick-knacks from around the world over the years. Though this box had one addition that was impossible to ignore. It was a small statue of a cat, worn and chipped with age, it right. Paw placed upon a star. It was surprisingly detailed considering its condition and age. Bundled in with the souvenirs, you likely noticed that statue. The hollow recording continued in perfect timing. That little beauty is a genuine artifact from the site. Both Izuku and his mother looked up from the statue in shock. Geto dismissed it as an inconsequential novelty art piece, and said it would be fine to send back. He's too short-sighted sometimes, he added with a small chuckle. I couldn't help but do a little digging into myself in my spare time, having seen nothing else quite like it. I put a copy of my observations in there with it. So keep it safe for me and we can look into together, he offered with a smirk. Izuku may not have the same drive as his father when it came to history, but they both shared an insatiable curiosity and analytical eye. Though uncommon, these bonding experiences were always welcome, all the more reason to look forward to winter. Now this last part of the message is for your mother. His voice gained a softer tone, expression more gentle. Inko darling, I hope you're doing well. I do love my work but miss our time together. He sighed. I promise this time I'll be there. Just a little longer until we can see other again. I'll be sure to make it up to you, he added a cheeky wink. In more ways than one. Like perhaps a night on the town and maybe a stop. Inko blushed, quickly shutting off the hollow before it could go anything further. I'll just finish this message up later. She shook her head. Honestly, that man doesn't think before he starts talking. She tried to sound annoyed, but happiness was too obvious. Izuku smiled slightly. Their family wasn't perfect, but he wouldn't have it any other way. He glanced to the worn statue and frowned a little. Well, it would have been nice if his father was there instead of an old statue. It was a few nights later, moon high in the night sky. Izuku sat by his window just looking up to the stars, a notebook marked, Hero Analysis for the Future. Volume 12 feet. Well over half full, the latest additions added from his usual scan for any interesting villain fights that broke out that day. It wasn't the same thing as doing it in person, but it's not like one could just summon those from the ether whenever he happened to be out and about. He brushed his hand over the cover, lingering longingly on the first word. Hero. It's all he'd ever wanted, a goal that seemed ever more far away the more he seemed to chase it. You should probably give up. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. Deku means someone who can't do anything. He looked away, anywhere but his notebook. His eye caught his father's statue, the worn cat holding its paw over the star. Beckoning, he stood up and walked across the room, picking it up. It was solid, but somehow not heavy. Despite its condition, some of the little details were remarkable, so much effort put into such an innocuous little piece. Just held it in both hands, eventually meeting its stony gaze. Could I be a hero? He asked softly. Is it really so terrible to want that? He wasn't sure who he was asking, but once he started he couldn't stop. I just want to help people, save them, with a fearless smile. Can't I have that? He wasn't sure when he had started shouting. I would do anything to be a hero. Give anything. He could feel the telltale trail down his cheek as tears welled up. He took a shaky breath and lowered his eyes. Arguing with a statue, he forced a pained chuckle as he placed it by the window so her could clear the tears from his eyes. I really must be losing it. He looked up to the posters on his wall. All Might, the symbol of peace, my hero. He knew what he needed. Right now, he headed over to his computer. Navigating away from the news page to a favorite, the search bar, immediately knowing what he was trying to find. He didn't even notice the slight sound of stone cracking. He's already saved over 100 people. It's only been 10 minutes. It was something about this video. All Might's debut that always stuck with him. In times like this he always came back. Almost as a reminder, but he'd seen it so many times he knew it by heart. The reactions, the dramatic entrance. Everything. He's laughing. When he first watched it as a kid he could feel the charisma, the power of what would become the symbol of peace. It made him feel like he could do anything. It's going to be okay. Why? He needed to feel that feeling again, to wash away his doubt, to refocus himself. To bury this painful feeling for a little longer. Because I am here. A flash of light was accompanied by the crumbling of rock. Izuku looked away from his computer to the source of the disturbance. The statue was breaking. No, was it even a statue? The cat moved, an outer layer of rock falling away. Its fur was black as the night sky with streaks of pink. Under its paw was the source of the blinding light. The star took on a sleek crystalline sheen radiating with power. The young boy tried to speak, say anything, but no words would form. What was he witnessing? Your heartfelt wish, a voice, light and gentle, reached his ears. Pure, selfless desire to protect others. It has awakened me. The cat looked him directly in the eyes. An piercing golden gaze. It was talking to him. Step forward, human. He moved his paw and the star-like gem began to float slowly toward him. Grasp the stone and accept its power. Izuku found himself moving forward, hand reaching out. Was this a dream? His hand shook as it grew closer, slowly taking the star into his palm, sending a tingling sensation up his arm and through his body. Though powerful enough to move his hair and clothes from sheer pressure, it was the gentle warmth he remembered, much like the voice. Close your eyes and speak the words in your heart. The gentle voice commanded. He closed his eyes, hot tears escaping in the process. He gripped the crystal tighter, its power seeming surging with his own emotion. Responding in kind. This had to be a dream, but if it wasn't? A small whimper escaped his lips as hope bubbled forth. This was insane, but if it's true, I want to be a hero. He shouted, voice cracking with emotion as the power seemed to only increase. Another phrase implanted itself in his mind, escaping his lips before he could really understand what he was saying. Pretty guardian, transform. The world went white, an unimaginable rush of power blinded him to everything around him. In the distance he heard the gentle voice one last time. Your wish is granted. He could feel the power moving through him with purpose. It began with his arms before moving to his legs, all converging to his torso before surging up through his head in dizzying display. The light faded as did much of the power, but Izuku could still feel it. The gentle warmth settled on his chest, radiating through the rest of his body. Under that all was a strange feeling he couldn't quite place. Before he could put much thought to it all, the former statue spoke, currently seated proudly on his bed. A successful awakening. It sounded pleased, tail flicking behind it left and right. How do you feel? It feels nice if a bit strange. He admits, clearing his throat a little. That's weird, his voice sounded off. He looked to his hands to see a pristine white glove. Gloves. His gaze ventured lower as the cat began to speak again. Indeed, the divine vestments of the guardians. They may look frail, but they are empowered with powerful protection and... Why am I in a skirt? Izuku screamed, voice shrill and panicked. He grabbed at the leotard top frantically, trying to get it off. Though as her grabbed the fabric, he felt something else under it. Izuku touched his chest once again, hands shaking. It was small, but there was a subtle difference. Unfamiliar fear rose as Izuku checked lower. Why am I a girl? She squeaked, body trembling as her brain tried and failed to make sense of what was happening. You mean you weren't female? The cat said with an even mix of reluctance and confusion. Of course not. Sorry. The cat placed one of its forepaws behind its head in a disturbingly human gesture. You humans look so similar it's hard to tell. Izuku, are you okay in there? Inko's worried voice trailed through the door. Fortunately she was too polite to barge right in. Izuku turned to the cat, trying to keep the bare minimum of calm. Turn me back, she whispered fiercely. The cat flinched at the intensity and started to lose its own composure. If you touch the gem again and think about changing back, it should work. The level of uncertainty in the cat's voice was not comforting, but she followed the instruction immediately. Placing her hand on the gem, ignoring the other feeling on her chest and desperately thinking about changing back. The radiant power left along with the outfit, the crystal star remaining behind. Back to normal, thank goodness. Izuku's voice didn't change back. Reluctantly reaching back down, the outfit was gone, but I'm still a girl. The doorknob clicked as her mother opened the door. The cat was giving a frantic jumbled apology, but it was all too much. Panic having topped out at its maximum level, her mind shut down, instead toppling over to the floor in a dead faint as his mother opened the door. 2 fainting spells later, one for each, with a much-needed hour of calm assurance as the Midoriyas found themselves opposite the former statue. Side by side, their resemblance had grown even more obvious. Izuku's features had grown softer, her former mess of curly green hair edging more into the wavy territory, but her clothes did well to hide any of the more obvious changes. Inko gripped her daughter's hands, returning every tentative squeeze. Despite her calm, neither were quite over the shock of it all. It made for a tough audience, to say the least. The cat cleared its throat, trying to figure out where best to begin. All things considered, I suppose I owe you both an explanation. Izuku tensed but didn't speak up. I am Aylward, chosen keeper of the hope of Devaria. I hail from kingdom a far beyond the veils of this reality. The statement was absurd, even from a talking cat. But his tone held no room for doubt, stated as purely a fact. I was sent to this world by my master to prepare an intercept force to stop an invasion from the Dark Ones who all but ruined my home in their conquest. He looked down, places a paw on the star-shaped gem on the table. My master forged this gem from purest magicite, designed to awaken latent magical power of those who open themselves to it. All in the slim chance we could prepare your world to brunt the vanguards of darkness and give you a fighting chance against their forces. That is certainly a lot to take in, Aylward. Inko said carefully, but frowned slightly. But that does not excuse rashly recruiting my son without even informing him of what that power might do. Her voice firmed up in defense of her child. The keeper bowed its head in shame. Ah, your words strike true, Lady Midoriya. I was blinded the rush of my awakening and the pure desire of your son. But that does not clean away the stain on my honor. Mom, it's okay. Izuku spoke up for the first time, a slight cringe from hearing her new higher voice once more. I was the one who took the gem when it was offered. I've always wanted to be a hero. This isn't exactly what I had in mind, but if it can help protect people, I'll do what I can. Izuku, his mother's anger drained away, looking at his son-turned-daughter in awe. Aylward, how long do we have? Do you have any idea when the invaders are coming? Her voice trembled a bit, but her expression was resolute. Both cat and mother could see the young girl's heroic spirit shining through. Yes, in the vaguest sense. Aylward began solemnly. I have to be put into stasis to cross the dimensional veil, but my master was skilled in many disciplines. A clear hint of pride entered his voice. Tapping into his visions, he told me after the passing of the second millennia, on the shortest night when the moon sat full among the stars, the Dark Ones would come. He said I would awaken to the wish of the one who would save this world. There could already be scouts hidden within your society, looking for. He looked back up, but his grim gaze was met by complete confusion. Quote. What? I'm not sure quite how to put this, Aylward. Inko bit her lip. The second millennia passed over 200 years ago. What? You must be mistaken. He looked between both green-haired females. Something must be off in the interpretations. How could your world not be enslaved to Dark Ones? Well, if this invasion was that long ago, it would have happened sometime during the second or third generation Quirks. Izuku muttered thoughtfully. Much of that time was lost to history due to social uprising due to Quirks. Civilized society all but collapsed. But if an outside force attacked and galvanized the populace, those early Quirk users must have fought the invasion back. But that would mean, after all of my master's sacrifice to get me to this world, I failed. The keeper shook, a few droplets falling to the tabletop as his body shook. I sat as a useless ornament while you defended your own world. My only action being ruining a young boy's life with my own arrogance. Izuku and her mother exchanged a glance before the elder Midoriya moved forward and placed a hand on the cat's back, causing him to flinch. She shushed him softly and stroked his back. It's okay, it's not your fault. The shaking grew more prevalent before the dam fully broke, the chosen keeper of hope bawling like a child while Inko comforted him. He didn't resist as he was picked up, burying himself in the hold as he let out all his pent-up emotions. It took a few moments, but slowly Aylward began to calm. Quote. Thank you, Lady Midoriya, he spoke softly, still choked with emotion. I apologize for that unsightly display. There's no reason to apologize. Inko assures the keeper as only a mother could. He motioned for her to place him down. She complied, placing him back on the table. He looked to the gem. The hope of Devaria. He took a deep breath. My master created me for two purposes. To find and train worthy guardians in this world. Aylward bit his lower lip before continuing. And to lead those guardians against the invasion that was to befall them. He hung his head down. I may have failed in the latter goal. But, he brought his gaze up to Izuku with fierce determination. I can still fulfill the first. The Keeper of Hope seemed to exert the same overwhelming presence it did when it awakened. Inko's eyes widened, fully understanding now that this being was one of immense power despite its appearance. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku slowly stood up from the couch, looking at the otherworldly being in. Ah, why yes, she answered softly. You wish to become a hero. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact. Despite that, Izuku found herself replying. Yes. Her new voice cracked awkwardly as tears came to her eyes. If you are willing to accept my training, I will do my very best to help you fulfill that desire. Aylward closed his eyes. On that honor of my master's soul. Inko nearly spoke up, concern bubbling up as the atmosphere grew tense. But she stopped. The look of joy and hope in her child's face held her tongue and brought tears to her eyes. Long ago she gave up on Izuku. A moment that killed her inside for the years that followed, and however strange this turn of events, it had reignited that hope. She closed her eyes, feeling her own tears coming as she waited for the response she knew was coming. Quote. Yes, Izuku managed to choke out. Reality set in the next day. Inko had nearly put the whole thing aside as a particularly strange dream. Though it was hard to deny it when she came into the living room to see the cat-like being sitting on the couch with a book open, several others on the floor. She steadied her rapidly beating heart and repressed the growing urge to scream. His ears perked and brought his attention her way. He offered one of those odd smiles a cat shouldn't be able to do. Good morning, Lady Midoriya. His gentle deep voice, edging away some of her fears. She saw a flash of the same creature vulnerable and crying the night before, and the rest of her nerves melted away. Gee, good morning, Aylward-san. It didn't make it any less awkward though. You seem to have kept yourself busy last night. She noted the book pile as she made her way to the kitchen and start the morning preparations. Did you have trouble sleeping? Oh, I don't sleep. I am a creation of magic despite my appearance. He admitted with no shame. I am blessed that I was granted such a high level of autonomy, but in the end you can't change who you are. He said with a hearty chuckle. The page of the book he'd been reading twinkled and turned on its own. Quote. Says the cat who turned my son into a daughter. She couldn't help herself, and held a little satisfaction as the cat flinched. Yes, poor choice of words I suppose. Silence overtook the apartment as Inko went about her normal routine, the keeper keeping perched on the couch reading through his current book, one of the encyclopedia volumes, at an impressive pace. It was only as she was about to start breakfast that another thought occurred to her. Aylward-san. She caught his ear twitch before he peeked up from his study. Yes. Do you eat? To what degree I'm not certain as I never experienced it myself, but I do believe so judging from some of my master's other creations, he replied cheerfully. But you do not have to make anything on my account, I'd hate to trouble you. Oh no, it's no trouble at all, Inko assured her guest as a good host should. Besides, it's always nice to have everyone eating together, she added with a smile. In that case it would be rude of me to decline, would it not? She heard him chuckle as his tiny head dipped back out of view. She made sure to adjust the recipe for a small extra portion. The cooking and other prep fell into line as any other morning. She distantly heard Izuku awakening and muttering something about taking a shower. Something Inko belatedly realized wouldn't go as planned. Ah, it wasn't a dream. A girlish screech came from the bathroom. Inko quickly set the food she was cooking aside and rushed off to the bathroom. She opens the door to find her daughter curled up on the floor naked and shaking. Inko bit her lip and quickly dropped down to envelope her daughter in a tight hug. Izuku baby, shish, it's okay sweetie, I'm right here. The soft cooing and gentle rocking seemed to work as she shaking slowed. Mom, I'm right here, it's going to be okay. It really happened, her voice squeaked out, muffled by her mother's chest. Yes baby, she whispered, her breathing slowed to a more comfortable pace. So even the cat, now more curious than panicked, out in the living room reading. Reading, yes, he's quite studious, Inko said with a smile, her daughter choking out a laugh. The crisis seemed to have passed. Izuku leaned back and reluctantly looked down at herself, blushing a little bit. Stand up now, her child complied. Inko, keeping a steady hand on her shoulders, slowly turns her to the mirror. She can feel her tense up but she remains calm. She looks at herself carefully as if trying to decipher something. Inko keeps quiet and lets her child come to her own conclusion. So, this is me, Izuku says softly. Her mother nods and remains silent. The younger girl chuckled a little. Is it sad that I can barely tell? Self-deprecation was a good step. Inko ruffled her hair lightly. You're only 9 sweetie, it will become more noticeable in time. She couldn't bring herself to say that. One step at a time. She felt Izuku tense up and take a shaky breath. She likely understood the unspoken statement. She always has been a smart child. Right, she swallowed and closed her eyes. This is going to take some time. It will, but you're not alone. Quote. Thanks mom. She did her best to not tear up but was failing. She took a few breaths and opened her eyes again. I should really clean myself up. She did her best to put on a brave face. Okay dear, would you like me to stay here? Please. She blushed darkly, her mother only smiled in response. Of course dear. Nearly an hour later Izuku shuffled out into the living room embarrassed but clean, her mother a step behind. Dressed in shorts and a long tee as she usual would. The only major difference than the night before being her hair. It had not rebounded into the curly mess it usually was, laying almost straight ticking the back of her neck. It was softer as well but she suspects that had more to do with the hair care products than anything. She had been so shaken up she left her mother baby her in the bathroom and she got a bit overzealous with the opportunity. Doing her best to ignore the foreign, yet not unpleasant, feeling. She looked over to the couch where Aylward was waiting, a pensive look on his face. Are you well? I heard the screaming, the clear guilt in his voice did much to calm the girl's nerves. Just, had a little trouble taking it all in, she admitted forcing a smile. Just some new things I need to get used to. Indeed, Aylward sighed somewhere between relieved and ashamed. Please accept my apologies once more. And no, it's okay. Despite her earlier freakout, the statement was genuine. So, I will have to do a bit of salvaging to finish breakfast but it should be done in a few minutes. Oh okay. Izuku glanced back over to the couch, the book Aylward had open was closed and floating to join the others on the floor. Is that your quirk? She asked in wonder. Just a basic bit of magic, he motioning a paw to the now free couch. Please feel free to sit. Alright. She slowly to a seat glancing over to the keeper who offered him a small smile. So. Izuku, please give me your hand. Aylward cut through the awkward tension like it wasn't even there. Palm up. His calm matter-of-fact demeanor broke no hesitation from the normally jumpy girl. Sure. She offered her hand and he examined it before placing his paw there and closing his eyes. She felt a tingling sensation travel up her arm and go through her body. Shivering a bit, she did her best not to move. It only lasted a few moments before Aylward opened his eyes with a knowing look. Reinforcement, it suits you. Reinforcement, yes, that is the power the hope woke inside of you. Aylward explained, watching the girl's eyes widen as she looked to her hand in awe. My power. She felt a smile twitch at her lips. She didn't feel any different than she did before she changed, but somewhere inside her she knew, her power. How do I use it? What does it do? Do I have to wear that skirt again to get it to work? She began to speak rapidly, stopping only as he raised a paw. One at a time, one at a time. He chuckled as the girl bounced slightly while politely remaining quiet. We will keep to the basics for now. In brief, reinforcement is the magic of strengthening objects and living beings. It's a supportive magic often used by guards and craftsmen, looked down on by short-sighted apprentices who only value destructive results. He explains calmly, I will show you how to fully awaken your reinforce after you have had some food. Your control will be very limited but will improve with time. The corner of his mouth quirked slightly. But if you want to fully master your power, you will need to use your guardian transformation. Your power will always be greater while wearing the divine vestments. The girl, who had all but been bursting with excitement to that point, frowned a bit and sighed. Dang. Izuku gathered herself up. Do not think of the vestments as an obstacle to overcome. They are a tool to support you and protect you. Aylward shook his head. If you wish to become a hero without them, you're going to need to work many times harder to reach that level. If that is your preferred goal, I will take that into account when considering my guidance, he states calmly. All right everyone, breakfast is ready. Inko's cheerful announcement ended the discussion for now. They gathered to the kitchen table, a simple breakfast, salvaged as best she could from what she had been cooking earlier. True to form as was still quite good. Aylward's own played a little further in so he could sit at the edge of the table. So I overheard that you two would be working on harnessing Izuku's new power. She led, clearly concerned. The training is nothing too dangerous, I hope. Not at all, milady. Today will be primarily mediation and mental exercises. Aylward assured the older woman. Reinforcement is a supportive magic. Even if we were to progress to any practical applications, you have little to worry about it. Thank goodness. Support. Izuku muttered thoughtfully. Support quirks tend to have problems sticking with the public in the rankings, he noted, mostly to herself. A hero team often makes effective use of such quirks. She trailed onward, Inko sighing softly as Aylward merely chuckled. In that case, I'll leave you two to that. I need to run some errands and make some calls. She begins to gather the empty plates. I would like a professional to check and make sure there are not issues due to the transformation. No offense meant, Aylward-san. None taken. If it will grant you peace of mind, then do what you must. The keeper waved it away with a paw. A professional. Izuku seemed to break away from her musings, looking worried. Yes, if this is permanent, then this has to be properly checked and documented before school starts back up again. Izuku looked down, clearly uncomfortable. Just focus on your training and relax as best you can. I'll make sure this gets sorted out. Have faith in you, Mom. She offered a smile despite her own concerns. Her daughter returned the sentiment. Inko puts the dishes in the sink to soak in. Grabbed her coat. She spared a glance over to Izuku one last time as she took a seat on the floor, the cat sitting proudly in front of her, explaining how they would proceed. She slipped out the door and immediately dialed up a contact. Inko. A connection was a bit sketchy, but she couldn't help but feel relief hearing her husband's voice. What's wrong? I'm about to head out to the sit. Hisashi, it's about the statue. His voice was direct and full of urgency. The statue. He seemed confused. Oh, did it break in delivery? No, she closed her eyes and took a breath. This is going to sound crazy, but I need you to believe me. She began from the beginning. The burst of light and sounds, Izuku's gender change, Aylward and the aftermath this morning. She tried her best to keep her composure, but by the end she couldn't help but get more frazzled. The image of Izuku staring at her reflection with that uncertain expression was burned into her mind. That's quite a story, he said with a sigh. I know. It sounds crazy. Inko rubbed her temple with her free hand. But I swear to you. It's okay, honey, I believe you, he assured her softly. Her heart soared, a huge weight lifted. You've never been a woman for flights of fancy, especially not to this degree, he seemed to gather himself. I'm going to make some calls, keep your phone handy, I'll get back to you with some names and numbers. Thank goodness, I wasn't sure who to even begin with. I'll call you soon, love. The phone disconnected and she gathered herself, a nice walk in the park would do her good right now. Soon as she had a plan of action, she'd be able to make some headway. Izuku sat, eyes closed and breathing slowly. Meditation was something that took practice and focus on oneself, not a common skill set for a 9-year-old, so Aylward was assisting. A droning incantation had placed the girl into a trance. Once he had been sure it was set, he began guiding her mind, trying to locate her magic source. It was a little different for each person, so you could never be sure quite how long it could take. Aylward glanced out the window. The sun had already passed its apex and was moving back down. He gave a tired smile. It was going to be one of those awakenings. More time passed, the afternoon sky tinging pink when the girl gasped. Aylward's ears perked up. Her looked up from his book to see his guardian glowing. An aura of faint green wavered just off of her body. Excellent, you found your source. He moved closer and began speaking slow and clear to pierce into Izuku's trance-like state. Imagine your hand moving forward and take the source in your grasp. He watched her carefully. The girl's breathing was increasing, becoming erratic. Concerned, he reached out and touched the wavering aura and closed his eyes. He tried to follow the mental path she had taken. She'd made good progress, but for one so young, any more would be a danger. With a flick of effort, the trance broke and Izuku toppled backward, eyes wide, catching her breath. What? But Aylward, I almost. You were very close, Guardian, Aylward said respectfully. But you used up too much stamina finding the source. I can keep going, she insisted, but found herself unable to sit up. Why am I so drained? Aylward finished with a small smile. You may not realize, but you've been searching for much of the day. An impressive feat for one so young. She dizzily glanced over to the wall clock and her eyes widened. 3:47 p.m. She squeaked, but we started after breakfast. She sat up fully, she's stomach rumbling loudly. She let out an awkward chuckle as she grabbed her stomach. Guess that settles it. Yes, I suppose it does. He replied in a genial tone. Let's see if we can get you a nice snack while we take a break. Sure. Aylward kept a careful eye on the girl as she slowly got to her feet and wobbled her way to the kitchen. It was just past 5 p.m. when Inko returned home. After running around all day, it was nice to finally take her shoes off. I'm home, she announced, shifting a paper bag in her arms to properly close the door. With all the craziness, the last thing she wanted to do right now was cook. A night of burgers and fries could be made up for with a healthier choice tomorrow. Mom, Izuku's excited voice carried from the living room. Rapid footfalls preceded a daughter-shaped missile that latched onto her middle. The frills of her divine vestments moving ever so slightly from an unseen wind. The outfit on a whole seemed to add an extra glow of excitement to the girl as she looked up to her mother with a wide smile. I did it. I found my quirk. Already? Inko blinked. The way Aylward spoke of it earlier, it sounded like a much more complicated feat. Magic is guided and powered by emotion, the guardian chimed in, trotting into view and taking a seat, tail naturally curling around his paws. Your child has the drive of a seasoned guardian. If she keeps this up, she's going to a force to be reckoned with. Well, no reckoning anytime soon. Of course, milady, training will progress at a measured pace as we agreed. He relented with a nod and smile. Good, now let's have some dinner. She motioned to the takeout bag in hand. You can tell me all about it then. Right. Izuku let go and started off toward the dining, nearly bouncing with energy in every step. Her skirt and ribbons swaying with each bounce. It took a few moments after she disappeared from view before she squeaked. I'm still in the skirt. Inko exchanged a bemused look with Aylward before both followed Izuku to the dining room. The vestments had been dispersed, leaving her back in her original t-shirt and shorts, cheeks rosy with embarrassment. Aylward chided the young hero in that she was going to need to get used to the outfit, which only received a pouty agreement in response. Inko didn't have the heart to tell her how adorable she looked. In time she would adjust. It would be her daughter's choice what kind of clothes she wanted to wear after all. If it ended up being something cute down the line. Topics shifted to the training itself, of spirit journeys and finding one's own power from within. So this kind of special guardian training regularly done with ones so young. Finding one's source isn't a unique to guardian cadets. Every citizen goes through it in their childhood to unlock their magic and find out what role they can best fill in society. Aylward explained. Everyone has magic within them after all. Everyone. Inko looked taken aback at the concept. You mean Mom could learn magic too? Izuku asked excitedly, nearly bouncing out of her chair. If she had the drive to, she certainly could. Admittedly, it is harder to start when you're older, but it's far from impossible. Inko took a moment to measure her response. The prospect of learning magic was something out of an old storybook. The temptation was there, but ultimately she ended up shaking her head. We'll consider it later on. The most important thing right now is to make sure everything is right with Izuku, she said firmly. The cat accepted the decision with a simple nod, her child letting out a soft, ah, of disappointment. As such, I have scheduled an appointment with a specialist. A doctor, Izuku muttered, shifting a bit in her seat. She is an old friend of your father's. That fact alone seemed to melt the tension from Izuku's shoulders. She'll make sure there are no negative issues with your change as well. Help us figure out what we need to do next. Okay, when is it? Not until Wednesday, so we'll have some time to take things easy till then. Inko's smile seemed to fully calm her child's growing anxiety. Now, how about we finish up dinner and you can show me how your reinforce works? That finally did it. A smile sneaking back onto the young girl's lips. Sure. The evening went on, Izuku showing off her new quirk to her mother. Visually it wasn't anything impressive, the affected item seemingly coated in a greenish glitter. Its effect though was as advertised. A reinforced tomato was thrown to the ground and simply bounced with no bruising or visible damage. Even that little action was enough to make Izuku a bit short of breath, but her bright smile assuaged any motherly worry. In time, Aylward assured, the drain would lessen and defensive boost would increase. As long as she continued to work hard, something the young girl had clearly been doing all day. It was a couple of hours after dinner that she began to wear down. She insisted she was fine, but shortly after she dozed off, leaning into her mother's side. Inko let her be, enjoying the calm evening after such a busy day. Her gaze turned over to the cat who was laying on the coffee table with another book, tail swishing like a pendulum. Aylward-san. She spoke softly so not to wake her daughter. His eyes flicked her direction before his head followed. Yes, Lady Midoriya, he replied in kind. Anyone can use magic, that's what you said. I did indeed. Quote. Does that mean anyone can be a guardian as well? She mused lightly as she played with her daughter's hair. To a point. He turned and walked to the table edge closest to Inko. They would have to have a pure and honest desire that could resonate with the hope of Devaria. Magic comes from emotion and the hope only reacts to positive desires, he explained, noting the thoughtful look that crossed the older woman's mind. Though I would recommend not attempting to contract with Gem, he noted firmly. What? Though I have no doubt you'd make a wonderful guardian, as your daughter no doubt will, the transformation no doubt will cause more problems than you'd like. I mean, I'm already a woman, it's not like I would become a man, right? No, you are correct. Guardian candidates are universally female. They are also tend to be quite young, he added meaningfully. Inko looked down to her daughter and back to the otherworldly cat. It would make me younger, she whispered, somewhere awe and fear. More than likely, how young I don't know. It all would come to how the hope decided to interpret your desire. He closed his eyes. Even if I were to try and assist on your behalf, there is only so such sway I could provide. The risk is just too great. I see, she smiled softly and closed her eyes. It was just a thought. She was not one for flights of fancy after all. But sometimes it was fun to think about. She carefully lifted up Izuku into her arms and started to carry her off to her room. Just before she made it to the hallway, she heard Aylward speak up one last time. I spoke the truth before, for what it's worth. He tilted his head with a smile. You'd make a wonderful guardian, Lady Midoriya. Flatterer. She shot back but returned his smile, leaving the cat chuckling to himself as she went to put Izuku to bed. The checkup was probably the most intensive on Izuku could remember. Samples for everything, quirk assessment, X-rays. The works. On top of all the physical checks, she was later subjected to a long series of questions about her feelings and experiences over the last week. It was exhausting, but her mother rewarded her stress with a trip for ice cream and a walk through the park. Izuku hadn't really played outside since the change, focusing so much on unlocking and testing her new quirk. Though if she was honest with herself, it was also to avoid an inevitable confrontation. Inko, a familiar voice called out. Izuku paused mid-bite when she spotted Katsuki and his mother. The elder Bakugo was dressed in comfortable casual wear, much different than her usual business suits. Mitsuki, Inko smiled, feeling her daughter tense up at the unexpected meeting. She did her best to make it seem like everything was normal. It's been ages. And it had been, ever since Katsuki's quirk had manifested. The close relationship between both families had strained. Inko didn't have a large social circle, so it was as much a hit to her as it had been to her daughter. It really has. Mitsuki smiled broadly. Say hello, Katsuki. The boy merely grunted in response. This defiance was met with a swift smack on the back of the head. They exchanged glares before he huffed and turned his gaze away. "Hello," he muttered clearly and enthusiastic. The boy turned his gaze to Izuku, who tried in vain to hide behind her ice cream cone. Before Inko could try and redirect the conversation, Mitsuku had fully approached, ready to chat. "So what brings you out today?" "Well, Izuku had a doctor's appointment. Izuku has been a bit under the weather lately. Inko would be the first to tell you she was not a good liar. She did her best to keep to half-truths without revealing the rather delicate situation. It took a bit longer than expected." What bring you out today? Aren't you normally working during the week?" She turned the conversation away. "Well, it's been a long time since I took some vacation, so I thought I use it to do a little bonding with the brat," Mitsuki said jovially. Mother and son had a volatile but somehow stable relationship. It certainly made it clear where the boy got it from. Inko half expected some outburst or rebuttal, but he was silent. In fact, so was Izuku. The children had ended up a few steps away talking amongst themselves. Well, Katsuki was talking at Izuku, who wasn't saying much in response. "Hisashi still out of the country?" Mitsuki continued obliviously. Yes, she tried to disengage but found herself pulled back into Mitsuki's need to chat. "So what adventure has Hisashi got himself wrapped up in this time?" she asked curiously, and Inko stifled a sigh of resignation. Perhaps she wasn't the only one with a small social circle. Off to the side, the two childhood friends exchanged their own awkward dialogue. "Haven't seen you around much, nerd." Katsuki started out remarkably calm, likely due to both parents being in earshot. "Been avoiding me or something?" "No, Kachan," Izuku managed before clearing her throat. Her mind raced, having forgotten how different her voice sounded. I've just been sick," she whispered lamely, turning her eyes away. "Well, don't get me sick, damn it, you sound all squeaky," he scowled. It's not contagious," she muttered, banishing the brief image of a pissed-off Kachan in her own divine vestments. It took all of her power not to snort with laughter. This wasn't the time to be attracting attention. Izuku fell silent, and Katsuki passed an annoyed glance to their mothers chatting away. Dumb hag, talks about spending time and she goes off chatting. Whether he was annoyed about the outing or the interruption, it was impossible to tell. "I'm surprised you even noticed," Izuku found herself saying before she really thinking about it. A sting in her chest she hadn't even realized was there. "What the hell are you muttering about?" Izuku flinched as she felt his glare land back on her. She tried so just stay silent, but she could feel it intensify. If they were alone, he probably would have grabbed her already. "Oi, answer me, Deku." I said I'm surprised you noticed I wasn't around," she muttered softly. This time she was heard. The dismissive snort said it all. "Like I could ignore you trailin' behind me all the time." The sting hit a little harder. The sheer bother Katsuki made it sound like her existing at all. Her mind trailed back to moments good and bad. Arguments, excitement, conflict and camaraderie, though as of the present there wasn't much of that last bit these days. She could feel the build-up of moisture, but she held it back. She couldn't start crying now. Not in front of Kachan. "Yeah, well, I probably won't be going anywhere till school starts," she said evasively, keep her voice soft so not to choke up. For a moment she saw a flash of something, concern maybe, but she probably imagined it. He merely shrugged. Whatever. There fell into silence once more. A few moments later their parents looked to be winding down. "Fucking finally," Katsuki muttered, heading back toward his mother. He paused after a step and glanced back. "By the way, your hair looks weird straight. Makes you look girly." The casualness blunted some of the built-up pain as she couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. He continued on and she was left to her own thoughts. Her mother returned exchange waves with Mitsuki as both Bakugos headed out back toward town, muffled arguments all the way. "I'm sorry, dear, I didn't mean to get pulled away like that." "It's okay, it's not like I could avoid him forever." Izuku forced a smile. Her mother's concerned expression caused the earlier hurt to bubble up in her chest once more. "Izuku, is everything okay?" I don't know why it hurt," she admitted, confused, eyes misting up. "It's not like it's any different from when we usually talk." "But it did." "Oh sweetie," she squeezed her daughter's hand, who returned the affection. The girl wiped her eyes on her sleeve and said nothing else. They walked in companionable silence, taking the scenic route. No matter how her mother tried to bring it up, Izuku avoided the topic of Katsuki from there on. She doubled down on training and improving her new quirk. Control was still hard going for now, so to facilitate proper instruction, Aylward insisted all training session be done in the divine vestments. This not only unlocked the power for easier access learning the basics but also got the girl used to his transformation. The rest of her wardrobe, sans underwear to her mother's insistence, were all boy clothes. If she ignored her voice or trips to the bathroom she could make it through the day without really considering her new life change. It wasn't exactly healthy but it worked. The divine vestments bore no such illusions, but though embarrassing, the boost of strength and control helped combat the awkwardness, associating positive feelings with the form she was confronted with. It was only a few hours a day, but even over the first few days it was making it easier to move about, if only just in front of her mother and teacher. The reality of it all only hit harder when the test results came in later that week. And I really was happy to see the positive reception this has received thus far. Hopefully everyone enjoys this chapter as well. The Aylward Izuku Inko dynamic is kinda fun to write, though the cast would increase as the story goes on. The Magical Girl Team, Aspect 1, start to kick in until we get closer to Ua, as there are no evil beasts to fight, or are there? Oh, besides I don't think Bakugo would appreciate being girlified for a power boost. Well actually he might not care if it furthered his goals, but we probably don't need a magical explosion girl. Anyway, I will be bringing in Hisashi at the very least next chapter to add to the whole dynamic. The next chapter might take a bit depending how my muse goes. I'm held up a bit but know where I want to go. So we'll just have to see how long that takes. And that's it for guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and share.